150 volcanic earthquakes. In 24 hours? From a single volcano? On a single island? Guys, when I saw that number come through from 5LX this week, I had to stop and read it twice, because that's not just high. That is a seismic spike that demands your full attention. And here's what makes it even more alarming. The day before that spike, Kanlaon recorded just 7 to 12 earthquakes per day. Normal baseline. Quiet. And then, suddenly April 12th, 2026 to 150 volcanic earthquakes in a single day, followed by 100 to the day after that. Something changed inside that mountain. Something shifted. And further in this video, I'll explain exactly what the science tells us is happening beneath Kanlaon right now. Because this is not just some isolated tremor sequence. This is a volcano that has been building, eruption by eruption, towards something potentially much more dangerous. Stay with me. Let me lay out exactly where Kanlaon stands as of this week, because the numbers from 5OX, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, are frankly extraordinary. During the week of April 8th through 14th, officials recorded continuing eruptive activity at Kanlaon throughout the entire period. Between April 8th and 11th, the seismic network logged 7 to 12 daily volcanic earthquakes alongside 1 to 5 daily periods of volcanic tremor, each lasting between 4 minutes and 2 hours and 26 minutes. That was already elevated, already a signal that something was pressurizing. But then April 12th happened. On April 12th, there were 150 volcanic earthquakes and 4 separate periods of tremor, each lasting between 40 minutes and 1 hour and 40 minutes. The following day, April 13th, brought 102 volcanic earthquakes and 2 additional tremor periods, 33 and 56 minutes long. 150. Then 102, back to back, on consecutive days. And the ash emissions didn't stop either. Ash emissions were recorded every single day from April 9th through April 13th, 5 consecutive days. 5 separate ash emissions occurred on April 9th alone, each lasting between 5 and 47 minutes. 1 ash emission on April 10th lasted 2 hours and 39 minutes. Sulfur dioxide emissions across the week ranged from 610 to 2,470 tons per day. Plumes rose 400 to 1,200 meters, that's 1,300 to nearly 4,000 feet above the summit, and drifted mainly southeast, south, and southwest. 5 days of ash emissions. So too spiking to nearly 2,500 tons in a single day. And Kanlaon remains firmly under alert level 2. Vivals confirmed in its April 13th bulletin that the 150 earthquakes recorded that day were accompanied by 4 volcanic tremors. The agency also noted 3 separate ash emissions occurring during the same 24-hour window. Civil aviation authorities have been advised to warn pilots against flying near the summit, as ash from sudden eruptions can be hazardous to aircraft. On a 2,465-meter, 8,087-foot stratovolcano, sitting 30 kilometers, about 19 miles from Bacolod, city of nearly 600,000 people, let that land for a second. Here's what I need you to understand. This 150 earthquake spike didn't appear out of nowhere. It is the latest data point in a pattern that has been building all year. This pattern is what really concerns me. On February 19th, Kanlaon produced its first moderately explosive eruption of 2026, sending an ash plume 2 kilometers into the sky. 1 week later, February 26th, a second eruption. Then, on March 15th, a third, each eruption more intense than the last. 3 major eruptions in less than 4 weeks. February 19th, February 26th, March 15th. Let me walk you through each one. Because the February 26th eruption specifically, guys, this was serious. The February 26th eruption lasted 2 minutes, was detected by 20 seismic freesound stations across 2 monitoring networks, and generated a dense gray ash plume that rose 2.5 kilometers, about 1.6 miles above the crater. The blast produced an explosive shockwave recorded at 218 pascals by an infrasound station. 4 kilometers away heard as a loud boom, up to 30 kilometers distant. Rumbling was reported as far as southern Leyte, more than 175 kilometers, 109 miles, away, due to atmospheric refraction of the sound waves. heard 175 kilometers away. 175. The eruption ejected incandescent ballistic fragments glowing volcanic. Bombs as high as 1.5 kilometers above the summit. Superheated projectiles landed as far as 1 kilometer south and 1.5 kilometers southeast of the crater, briefly forming a glowing collar of deposits around the summit rim. The pyroclastic density currents descended as far as 2 kilometers down the eastern and southeastern flanks and set forest fires along the upper slopes that burned through the entire night. Glowing volcanic bombs raining down, setting the forest on fire. At night, ashfall from the February 26th eruption affected 121 barangays across 16 cities and municipalities in Negros Occidental. Reports described episodes of ash rain, continuous fallout of very fine ash particles in Pontevedra and La Castellana. Pyroclastic density currents ignited 2 separate forest fires on the upper flanks, burning for hours before finally dying out. 121 communities covered in ash. From a single 2-minute eruption, and then 3 weeks later, March 15th, a 1-minute moderately explosive eruption at 6:07 p.m. on March 15th generated an ash plume that rose 5 kilometers to 3.1 miles above the summit. Large incandescent blocks were ejected as far as 1 kilometer from the crater rim. Hot ejecta ignited 2 fires along the forest margins on the upper southeastern flank, fires that burned until 3:30 a.m. the following morning. The monitoring station closest to the crater was damaged after being engulfed in the resulting fire. The monitoring station burned by its own volcano. When your own scientific equipment gets destroyed by the eruption it's supposed to, monitor that tells you everything about the scale of what is happening up there. The March 15th eruption deposited ashfall across at least 54 barangays and 11 local government units. Classes were suspended on March 16th in Himamalan City, Moises Padilla, La Castellana, and Binalbagan as a precautionary measure to reduce children's exposure to ashfall. Schools closed. Children kept home because the air was filled with volcanic ash. This is life around Kanlaon right now. Guys, before I explain what is actually happening inside this volcano and why the 150 earthquake spike is such a critical signal, can you do me a quick favor? Give this video an early like and a hype. Share it with someone who should know about this. Drop a comment below. Your reaction, your thoughts, your questions helps this channel reach more people who need to understand what's happening here. This genuinely costs you nothing. Now, let me take you inside the volcano, because this is the part that most people are completely missing. To understand why 150 earthquakes in a single day matters so much, I need to explain what is physically happening inside Kanlaon, because this is not abstract. It's real, measurable, documented geology. And it follows a pattern that Fivolkes has now identified as a repeating eruption mechanism at this specific volcano. Fivolkes has explicitly stated that the repeating eruption mechanism at Kanlaon involves closed-system degassing, where gas pathways from a deep magma source become blocked or sealed. Pressure builds inside the edifice. And when that pressure can no longer be contained, it releases explosively. Fivolkes says this has been the repeating mechanism since the volcano's first moderately explosive activity in June 2024, producing nearly similar seismic characteristics and volcanic hazards each time. So imagine this. Deep underground magma is rising. It's releasing gases. Those gases need pathways to escape through the volcanic edifice. Now imagine those pathways get sealed, blocked by cooled lava, crystallized material, hydrothermal deposits. The gas keeps building, the pressure keeps rising, the mountain keeps inflating. The seismicity, the earthquakes, start climbing as the rock fractures under increasing stress. 7 earthquakes per day, then 12. Then suddenly, 150. Geodetic monitoring using electronic tilt and GPS data has shown that Kanlaon's volcanic edifice has been swelling, inflating at very low, fluctuating rates since 2022. More pronounced short-term inflation began in late January 2026, just before the February eruptions. Fivolkes interprets this as the direct result of the closed-system degassing process, blocked gas. Pathways forcing pressure to build until it triggers an explosion. The mountain is inflating. GPS instruments are measuring the ground physically moving outward. This is not speculation. This is data. And here's the critical thing about volcanic tremor, which we now have for periods of 40 minutes to nearly 2 hours at a stretch. Volcanic tremor is different from regular earthquake signals. A regular volcanic earthquake is sharp, brief, sudden. It represents rock cracking. Tremor is sustained. It sounds like a low, continuous rumble, and it almost always indicates fluid movement. Magma moving, gas migrating, something fluid forcing its way through the plumbing system. When you go from 7 earthquakes per day to 150 and add 4 sustained tremor periods, that tells scientists that the internal system just became significantly more active. More fluid is moving. More pressure is building. More gas is forcing its way up. And the SO2 numbers confirm this. Sulfur dioxide emissions at Kanlaon have averaged 2,800 tons per day since the current unrest period began in June 2024, and averaged 1,460 tons per day since January 2026. During the week of the 150 earthquake spike, SO2 ranged from 610 to 2,470 tons per day. SO2 is the gas that comes from magma, not from hydrothermal fluids, not from groundwater. It's from magma itself. When SO2 is high, that is a direct signal that fresh magma is degassing at depth. And on April 12th, the same day as 150 earthquakes, SO2 hit 2,470 tons. That is a pressurized system, expressing itself simultaneously through earthquakes, tremor, ash emissions, and sulfur gas. All for indicators. On the same day, I always go back to the history, because volcanoes have patterns, and Kanlaon's pattern over the past 2 years is one of escalating intensity. Let me show you exactly what I mean. On June 3, 2024, the first major eruption of this current unrest cycle produced a plume 5,000 meters to 16,400 feet. Above the vent, and a probable pyroclastic flow 2 to 3 kilometers down the southern and southeastern slopes. Sulfurous odors and ashfall were reported as far as Bacolod, 85 kilometers, 53 miles away. Haze particles drifted as far as the Bicol region on Luzon. About 57,563 people were affected. 3,905 were displaced. 2,680 houses damaged. Agricultural losses estimated at $3.07 million United States dollars. $3.07 million in agricultural damage. From a single eruption, on an island where farming communities depend on those harvests. Then December 2024. In September 2024, Kanlaon produced its highest volume of sulfur dioxide emissions since 2009 to 9,985 tons in a single day. The record was surpassed the very next day at 11,556 tons. Then on December 9, 2024, Fivolks raised the alert to level 3 after an explosive eruption produced a 4,000-meter plume. Pyroclastic flows down the southeastern flank, and a shockwave heard across multiple islands. The eruption generated ashfall visible from Iloilo City and Toledo in Cebu. Around 87,000 people were evacuated, including nearly 47,000 in La Castellana alone. 87,000 people evacuated. In a single event, from a volcano that is still active, that has erupted 3 more times since then, and is now spiking to 150 earthquakes per day. Kanlaon is the most active volcano in the Visayas region of the Philippines. Having erupted more than 40 times since 1819, its eruptions are typically phreatic, steam-driven, of small to moderate size. But the last magmatic eruption, involving fresh lava reaching the surface, occurred in 1902. 5 ELK scientists have explicitly raised concern that the current activity could be leading toward the first fully magmatic eruption since that date. The first magmatic eruption since 1902, let that breathe. If the volcano transitions from hydrothermal explosions, the steam-driven blasts we've been seeing, to a fully magmatic eruption where fresh lava reaches the surface, the scale of what follows would be categorically different. And the warning signs Fivolks has identified, they are present right now. I want to read you something, because Fivolks issued a formal assessment after the March 15th eruption that I think everyone needs to hear. This is their language, not mine. Fivolks stated that given the March 15th eruption was the third within the space of a single month, a sustained increase in the frequency of explosive eruption at Kanlaon could promote activity of intruding magma at depth that could facilitate the onset of a fully magmatic eruption. That sentence from the official Philippine Volcanology Agency is about as direct as it gets. They followed it with this. PHIVOL stated that a fully magmatic eruption could produce dangerous volcanic hazards within the lava and PDC hazard zones of the volcano, disperse large volumes of airborne ash over the central Visayas region, and produce material that could feed major life-threatening lahars in channels draining the edifice. Large volumes of airborne ash over the entire central Visayas, life-threatening lahars in draining channels. Those are three distinct, documented threats. And then, PHIVOL added a specific instruction to local government units. Local government units were specifically instructed to prepare their communities within the PDC hazard zone, especially those within the 6-kilometer radius, for subsequent evacuation in case unrest escalates and alert level 3 is raised. Prepare for evacuation. If alert level 3 is raised, right now we are at level 2. Alert level 3 means magma is at the crater. It means hazardous eruption is imminent. And the 150 earthquake spike on April 12th followed by 102 on April 13th is exactly the kind of seismic signal that precedes escalation. Let me bring this back to the human level, because these aren't just numbers and alert levels. These are families, farmers, communities that have already been through multiple evacuations in the past 2 years. In the December 2024 eruption alone, around 40,489 people in the Visayas were affected, with an estimated $681,314 in agricultural damage across approximately 298 hectares of farmland. 298 hectares of destroyed farmland in a single event, and these communities have to wait. Every eruption, more ashfall on their crops. Every eruption, schools closed. Every eruption, more questions about whether the next one will be the big one. Reports from communities around Kanlaon after the February 26th eruption described episodes of what witnesses called ash rain, continuous. Sustained falling of fine volcanic particles in La Castellana and Pontevedra. Sulfurous fumes were reported simultaneously in multiple communities, including Barangay Malam in La Carlota City. Ash rain. Sulfur fumes. In communities where children play outside, where farmers depend on the land, where rivers run from the slopes of the same volcano that is now rattling with 150 earthquakes per day. And here's the thing about lahars that I really need you to understand, because this is the secondary threat that could affect communities far beyond the permanent danger zone. PHIVOL specifically warned that communities already impacted by recent lahars must remain vigilant, especially in case intense rains occur and erode newly deposited loose ash or pyroclastic material on the upper slopes. This could generate hot lahars and sediment-laden stream flow capable of causing life-threatening injuries, washout, and burial. Every eruption adds new loose material to the slopes. Every heavy rain event after that, even months later, can mobilize that material into rivers, into valleys, into communities that thought the danger had passed. Kanal has 40 known drainage channels flowing from its slopes, 40 potential lahar paths, each one a hazard corridor after every explosive eruption. Let me explain the alert system clearly, because understanding the difference between level 2 and level 3 is everything right now. PHIVOL uses a 0-to-5 scale. Level 0, normal background activity. Level 1, slightly elevated unrest. Level 2, where Kanlaon sits right now, moderate volcanic unrest. Increased probability of eruptive activity. Entry into the permanent danger zone is strictly prohibited. Level 3 indicates magma is at or very near the crater. Hazardous eruption is possible within days, 2 weeks. Extended danger zones are activated. Mass evacuations can be ordered. Level 4, hazardous eruption is imminent or already occurring. Level 5, major eruption in progress. The last time Kanlaon reached alert level 3 was December 9th, 2024, after an explosive eruption with pyroclastic flows and a shockwave heard across multiple islands. That event triggered evacuation of 87,000 people. So the question now is, how far are we from level 3? And the honest answer is, nobody can say for certain. What I can say is this: the pattern of 3 explosive eruptions in 1 month. the January 2026 warning about ground swelling matching conditions before the December 2024 eruption. The sustained inflation of the volcanic edifice since 2022, the 150 earthquake spike on April 12th, the 5 consecutive days of ash emissions in the week that followed, and SO2 hitting 2,470 tons on the same day as peak seismicity. Every one of those indicators is pointing in the same direction, upward. So what are the specific signals that would indicate this is about to escalate to level 3? Volcanoes monitors 5 key parameters simultaneously at Kanlaon. First, seismicity trends. The jump from 7 to 150 earthquakes per day is significant. If that number continues to climb, or if volcano-tectonic, earthquakes start occurring at shallower depths, that indicates magma rising. In January 2026, Volcanoes issued a special report when seismicity reached 45 volcano-tectonic earthquakes in a single morning, with the strongest events felt at intensity levels I to IV in La Carlotta City, Bacolod City, and Bago City. Those events were located 0 to 13 kilometers beneath the northwestern flanks. When earthquakes become shallow and felt by residents at the surface, that is magma very close to the upper conduit. In September 2024, SO2 hit 9,985 tons in one day. The following day, minus 11,556 tons. These numbers preceded the December 2024 level 3 escalation by 3 months. Volcanoes at the time said this raised concern about the possibility of the first magmatic eruption since 1902. Current SO2 is at 2,470 tons on peak days. Watch for that number to climb rapidly toward 5,000 or beyond. Third, ground deformation. If GPS and tilt sensors show accelerating inflation, the mountain's swelling faster than it has been, that's a signal of magma accumulation increasing at depth. Fourth, eruption frequency. 3 eruptions in 1 month was already the trigger for Volcanoes to issue its formal magmatic escalation warning. If eruptions start occurring weekly, or if a single eruption becomes sustained rather than 1 minute long, everything changes. Fifth, the plume character. Current eruptions produce grayish ash plumes. If the ash turns dark brown or black and contains juvenile magmatic material rather than older hydrothermal deposits, that's the transition to magmatic eruption. That is the threshold Volcanoes has been watching for since June 2024. Guys, I have to say something honestly. Kanlaon has been one of the most underreported volcanic stories of 2026. The Philippines sits on one of the most geologically active parts of the planet. Its communities have been dealing with ash, evacuations, and agricultural destruction for 2 years now. And this week's 150 earthquake spike is the loudest signal yet that we need to be paying attention. Volcanoes is doing remarkable work: daily bulletins, real-time monitoring, early warnings, community advisories. They are watching this mountain around the clock. Follow their official bulletins for the most current data. And if you want to understand more about the broader volcanic picture in the Philippines right now, I have videos covering Mayon and Tal in the end screen, because what's happening at Kanlaon does not exist in isolation. This is part of a larger story about a volcanic arc, under increasing pressure, expressing itself through the ground beneath one of the most populated island regions in Southeast Asia. Give this video a like and a hype. Share it because this story matters. And leave me a comment with your thoughts. If you want to support the channel, links in the description. I don't do brand deals here. Stay safe, guys. Bye-bye.